Welcome to your second lecture that you are receiving in our online classroom. Hopefully you guys have been able to transfer to the Google Classroom well so far, and hopefully you guys have not been too inundated with work thus far. I know this is definitely a stressful time, and some of you guys have been utilizing office hours, and I'm sure more of you will be utilizing that as time goes on. For the second lecture, as you can see, it's going to be a review of content before break. So really what we're going to be looking at is Lebensraum, Hitler's expansion, and all the way up to Operation Barbarossa. We're going to stop just shy of Japanese expansion in Asia. We'll have a separate lecture going over that, and that'll be kind of when we hit module number 2. So, we are kind of in our World War II unit. For lack of a better term, it is a mega unit, and it is the first half of the European theater of war. This is the previous unit that we left off from, and we kind of really completed. Again, World War II is being completed in chunks. So we're going to cover and start with the Blitzkrieg and go all the way up to Operation Barbarossa and Stalin's battle for Russia. Again, we are going over information that was already covered, and you guys are going to have an assignment that just kind of, again, shaking off the cobwebs. And starting next week, we will be getting our first half of the Asian theater of war, and that's when we're going to spend a few minutes going over some stuff that we already covered, and then finally we will hit completely new content from that point forward and moving into the rest of the semester. Now, 3 things that we of course have to remember is Lebensraum, expansion, and appeasement. Now, Hitler is going to expand from Germany into Europe, and he's initially going to be reclaiming old German territory, such as the Rhinelands, and he's going to do this under the idea of Lebensraum. And I'm sure most of you remember what Lebensraum really meant, which is this idea of living space. And when it comes to something like the Rhinelands, it wasn't that big of a deal within the eyes of the League of Nations. The League of Nations essentially thought this isn't really that big of a deal. He's kind of stepping into his own backyard. So Lebensraum is going to be this big reason as to why Hitler is going to be allowed to expand for so long. Now, we did study Hitler's expansion. He's really going to expand into Austria and Czechoslovakia, and then finally Poland. And all throughout, it's important to remember that Hitler is breaking countless international agreements when acquiring this land, the Munich Pact being one of them, the Treaty of Versailles being the primary one, and the League of Nations is the chief international law body, and as we all studied, their goal was to keep peace and to maintain peace through collective security. So the fact that they did nothing does, for a lack of a better term, rest on their shoulders. Now, again, expansion, Lebensraum, and finally this word of appeasement. The League of Nations definitely practiced a policy of appeasement when Hitler was allowed to march into the Rhinelands, when Hitler was allowed to launch into march into Czechoslovakia, and march into Austria with no one doing anything. They did finally act. France and Britain finally did act when Hitler would invade Poland. However, nonetheless, that's really not going to do much because that was a phony war. But even the idea of appeasement was really shown in the Munich Pact, and how Hitler was pretty much was supposed to agree, okay, you're not going to take any more land, and then only a few more hours after that, or really for lack of a better term, a few hours after the deal was signed, he turns around and goes and takes over all of Czechoslovakia. So these are 3 very important vocabulary words I want you to remember, and more so the explanation. Lebensraum, which is living space, Hitler's expansionism into Austria, Czechoslovakia, and Poland, and then finally the League of Nations appeasement. Those are 3 things that you must understand whenever you're talking about the causes of World War II and leading into World War II. Now, after the invasion of Poland, Hitler is going to advance into France. Now, we all, of course, remember the battle strategy of Blitzkrieg. He's obviously going to use this in Poland, and he's going to use this in France, and he's also going to use this pushing into the USSR. Now, do remember Blitzkrieg does consist of 3 different stages. The first stage being air attacks, the second stage being panzer divisions, that move in, and it is important that you remember panzers do not. Panzers are the tanks, the German tanks. They move in groups. They do not move by themselves. And finally, the infantry moves in by themselves, or not by themselves. They move in with the panzers shortly behind them, and they kind of just clean up all throughout. Now, as France is being invaded, they're really going to receive little support, and this is really because they were taken over by force. They couldn't do much to fight against the Nazi war machine. It would only take a little bit, like 40 to 50 days before the country finally completely falls. And this is really demoralizing. So when you think about it and look at it a map, Germany now pretty much holds the entire heartland of Europe and what you could see of Europe. Now the British will, excuse me again, the British will send a majority of its army to aid France. However, they would quickly be pushed to two areas. And again, when I say the majority of the army of the British military, I do kind of, for lack of a better term, mean the entire army. The battalion, there are two battalions that are very important, or two areas that you must remember. Dunkirk, which is the more important one, and Calais. Now, the battalion at Calais is really going to provide a distraction, while the battalion at Dunkirk is going to escape by boat. Really, most people remember the men in Operation Dynamo, as you can see further down here, Operation Dynamo. But of course, I'm really including the men of the battalion at Calais to kind of give them an honorable mention, for lack of a better term, because their entire battalion was sacrificed so that Operation Dynamo could take place and that countless soldiers could be saved. Now, of course, if Operation Dynamo had not succeeded, the entirety of the British Army would have been wiped out. Calais would have been destroyed, and all the men at Dunkirk would have been destroyed, killed. And that pretty much means that the British military would have nothing left to defend their island home. Now, speaking of their island home, we now lead into the Battle of Britain. Now, the Battle of Britain is going to take about 113 days between when Hitler initiated his air raids on Britain and then when he's finally going to give up. It is important to remember that the best defense that the British had to stave off a Nazi invasion was the English Channel, was that moat between them and Europe. And really, this is going to be aided by, obviously, a few other very helpful things, such as the determined Royal Air Force, a Royal Navy, and all of these will be used in combination with one another. Now, a team of codebreakers, as we studied, they're going to use Enigma machines, and these codebreakers are going to work very, very hard round the clock to solve German military codes. And really knowing the language of your enemy and knowing the terminology, the secret codes that they are using, gives you a fantastic and huge upper hand. Now, the invention of radar would also help British pilots detect how many German aircraft were coming for them and how long they might be prepared to fight for, how many men, where are they coming from, are they coming in waves, is it just one big brute force? I'm so sorry, excuse me. Now, Hitler is obviously going to be unable to effectively knock out the British Air Force due to the German military codes being deciphered, due to the fact that British pilots in the Royal Air Force continue to defend the islands quite successfully, due to the fact that the British people's will was not broken. And because of this, Hitler could not secure a beachhead. He could not successfully control the skies, and therefore he canceled what would be known as Operation Sea Lion. Now, it's important to know that Sea Lion was Hitler's battle plan and invasion plan for once he had secured a beachhead, he could then successfully start bringing in his panzer tanks and start bringing in the German army, the German SS troops. Now, because that never happens, obviously he's going to get very aggravated with the British, and he's going to I'm so sorry, excuse me again. He's eventually going to turn around and really set his eyes on another prize, which is Russia, and he's going to look and initiate Operation Barbarossa, and that brings us to our next point. Hitler's going to invade the USSR and initiate Operation Barbarossa. Now, Hitler is going to begin by attacking through Poland, and again, he's going to continue using this tactic of blitzkrieg. Speed. Don't allow yourself to be bogged down by trenches. If you get bogged down by trenches, you can have a repeat of World War One. You cannot do that. Speed, speed, speed. Now, obviously, you guys should remember by this point that. Hitler and Stalin had signed a non-aggression pact saying, "Hey, we're going to leave each other alone. We'll split Poland in half. Kind of we'll right this wrong of land being taken from both of us." And that's how we'll rectify this. Now, some of you guys may have remembered the fantastically Russian story of how when Stalin got this news, he locked himself away in his summer home and drank nothing but vodka until he was ready to come out and stoically defends the Russian country. And obviously, this is a fantastic story. Whether it's true or not, that's kind of up to you guys to believe. I like to believe it's true. I like small stories like that. Now, Hitler's going to launch a three-pronged attack. One attack is to the north, which is Leningrad. One attack is to the middle, which is Moscow, and one attack is to the south, which is Stalingrad. Because he launched, and keep in mind when you look at a map of Russia, this is all the way to the north, all the way to the south, and smack right in the middle. Hitler was begging for a front line that was too long for him to maintain. I believe it was over 1,000 miles long. And also, Hitler isn't an idiot to a large degree. He's a pretty smart man. So he began his attack in winter. And if you guys remember, supply lines are a huge, vital part. If you do not have vital supply lines or stable supply lines, your military will lose out. So Hitler knew time was not his ally. He started in summer. He needs to wipe out any form of Russia before winter sets in. Because if winter sets in, if he's learned anything from Napoleon, from the Romans, from anyone, it's that Russia will hold out if they have a winter going. And the Soviets realized this, and they realized how dependent the German military was on the Russian land. So what they're going to do is they're going to adopt a scorched earth policy. Essentially, okay, we have to retreat, burn everything, burn the factories, burn the land, burn everything possible. And this will really mess with the German advance. And of course, Hitler just was like, okay, we just got to be quicker. We got to push them out. We got to push them out. And finally, it's going to result in German forces fighting in Russia during winter. Now, there are three battles of Russia that you really need to kind of just remember by name and really kind of remember by importance. Now, the Battle of Moscow, citizens are going to lay thousands of miles of trenches, and each trench is going to have not barbed wire in it, but kind of surrounding it. Every single able bodied person is going to be expected to defend this city. Literally, a total of 2 million men on both sides are going to fight for control over just this one city. And because the Russian people were so determined to not let their capital go, and because again Stalin was really willing to just let his people die and fight this out, they were successful at the Battle of Moscow. And Hitler has a bad case. He's kind of like a little kid who gets easily distracted with things. He's gonna kind of put down the Battle of Moscow and divert troops elsewhere. And a lot of historians and battle statisticians today argue that if he had continued to push into Moscow and continued to fight and kind of had the same iron will, he could have really knocked out Moscow, and the world we live in could look very differently. Stalingrad. Stalingrad is the kind of most important of these three, if I had to say. If I were to ask you on a quiz, hint, hint, what was the turning point in the European theater of war, specifically in Russia, you would say the Battle of Stalingrad. And that's because this was where, in the north, this was their namesake. Stalin. This is Stalin's city. You cannot, under any circumstances, let it fall to those Nazis. You cannot let it happen. So because Stalin realizing that, he issues a very famous order which was titled Not a Step Back. Stalin is going to order that there will be no retreat under any circumstances. And I know we covered this in class. Essentially, you either die by German gunfire, you die from old age because you won this war, or you die from our bullets because you were trying to run in the other direction. You will soak this ground in your blood, or you will soak it in their blood. It is as simple and incontestable as that. Stalin and Hitler both wanted this city. Now, again, as mentioned about a minute ago, winter was the best defense of the Russian military. Really, the Germans kind of get tired out. And then finally, the Battle of Leningrad. The Siege of Leningrad, and again, this is one city, is going to last for 900 days, and that's not a typo. The battle for Leningrad lasted for quite a while. Now, the protection of Leningrad stopped the German advance to the Caucasus region. Now, Hitler really made this push for Leningrad really hard because within the Caucasus region, and this is very important even in today's politics, that is one of the most oil-rich regions in the world, not only during the 1940s, but also today. So Hitler realized, okay, if we can push through Leningrad, break the Soviet line there, take control of that city, we have a clear-cut line to the Caucasus. Unfortunately, and he needs oil. You need oil to feed this Nazi war machine. He was unable to do it, and therefore he kind of again gets distracted. He's pushed back, and these battles are really going to make a big difference. In Moscow, he loses. In Stalingrad, he loses, and in Leningrad, Hitler loses. Stalin is successful in all three of these, and each victory is more and more symbolic win to the Soviets. And even to a certain extent to the British. Now, the British again kind of are facing their own moral victories, and if you kind of compare it by numbers, yes, the Soviets lost by numbers. They definitely lost more people, but they were able to break the will of the Nazi army. They were able to make the Nazis hold their position and not push forward any further, and that is a significant win. So, when we talk about your assignment for the next Google Classroom, you need to make a thinking a thinking map. I'm going to leave this up to you. You have a circle map, a flow map, a tree map, a multi-flow map, a bubble map, a whole to parts, a brace map, a double bubble map, and a bridge map. Personally, I highly suggest when you're talking about everything that we did, you use a flow map and kind of just really, there's no real word limit. I do suggest that every single one, for every slide, you have a little part on the flow map, or the tree map, every single significant subject you do as tree map. These thinking maps are going to be kind of your best way to really study for quizzes. And again, quizzes are really kind of, I would prefer that they not be open note, but and I'm going to say that they are not open note, but I live in the real world. I know a lot of you guys will probably use your notes despite me asking you not to, which is completely fine. We're all tempted to it, and I completely understand that you guys want to get a high grade. So this will be very helpful in organizing your thoughts. So getting this practice in. So what you need to do is on paper, you need to create a flow map. Either a flow map right here for sequencing, a tree map for classifying, a bubble map, or a brace map. Those four will be the best ones for what you are doing. And your assignment. Take a picture of it, upload it to the classroom, to the Canvas classroom, and then you will have completed your second assignment for the course. You will have some time. The due date is still going to be posted, and then hopefully we will be starting our next unit relatively soon. You should be having a quiz very soon as well. So make sure you're keeping out. Do not forget that I have office hours. I appreciate you guys working so diligently, and I hope you guys are all in good health and are staying mentally and physically healthy during this time. You have my office hours, you have my Gmail, so please do not hesitate to reach out at any point. Bye-bye.